Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dead Barbecue, and today we are going to sear this tomahawk ribeye with bourbon. Now you can use anything else here that is high in alcohol content, any other sort of whiskeys, ryes, scotches, but bourbon is my absolute favorite since it not only helps create a spectacle of a fireball, but it really helps impart some extra flavor. So you get a little bit of sweetiness and almost a nuttiness in the crust, and I think you're absolutely gonna love it. And your friends and family will either be terrified you're about to burn the house down or really impressed with your fire management skills. Trust me, it is a lot simpler and more fun than you might have thought. So I'm gonna show you everything you need to know, including going back to yesterday when we dry brined this steak. The dry brine process is an incredibly important step, especially with steak, and 24 hours is about the perfect time. Plus, I've made a couple tweaks to my rub that I've shared in a couple videos. And so to make sure you sort of catch that subtle tweak, where I'm going a little bit less Lowry's, a little bit more diamond kosher crystal salt, plus a change in pepper that if you haven't tried it, you absolutely need to, because going from that pre-packaged pepper to some fresh cracked black pepper in my rubs has made a world of difference in flavor, and that is what is on this steak. So I'll rejoin you in a few minutes after you go back to yesterday, and I show you how we're going to start building our flavor base with using truff hot sauce with that truffle oil for a bit of an umami as a binder. Add our rub, let this hang out in the fridge overnight, and when you come back, we'll start setting up our Big Joe for the ultimate flambe tomahawk ribeye. If you haven't seen it before, my favorite Texas-style dry brine rub is mostly a bit of pepper, some salt, with that salt content actually split between two, evenly between Diamond Crystal Kosher salt as well as Lowry's, and then add a little bit of garlic at the end for some good measure. But this, in some cooks, is just on the borderline of being a little bit too much salt, which is what I'm getting from the Lowry. So instead of doing 2 tablespoons of black pepper, a tablespoon of Diamond Crystal Kosher salt, and a tablespoon of Lowry's, we're going to break the tablespoons in the salt down into teaspoons. So 1 tablespoon is 3 teaspoons. So what I'm going to do is do 2 teaspoons of Lowry's and 4 teaspoons of Diamond Crystal Kosher salt, as that will help just reduce the saltiness a little bit while keeping some of those great flavors. The other thing that has made a huge difference is using something like this fresh cracked black pepper versus the pre-cracked stuff here that I'm using from Costco. The only problem with this is it's really slow, especially when we need something like 4 tablespoons. So I went and I finally got myself one of these. Let me show you the difference it makes. So even though I know the fresh stuff always tastes better than the pre-ground, when you need something like 4 tablespoons, getting enough pepper out of a traditional grinder just takes a long time. Like, I haven't even made a dent here. That's maybe an 1/8 of what I need. So I got the Man Kitchen pepper cannon after Christmas. Let me show you the difference this makes at getting the volume of pepper we need quickly. So in elapsed time, that was just maybe about 30 seconds, and you can see we've got a full container of fresh cracked black pepper. And I wish there was such thing as smell-o-vision, because if we were just to take a whiff of what sort of peppercorn oils we're getting in the pre-ground stuff, I mean, you can tell it's pepper, and this is maybe great for a soup or adding to your eggs, but in comparison, knock your socks off. That's where you're reminded that pepper is actually a spice. And like I mentioned, I started small, and I actually took the time to grind that out a few times, and I was absolutely sold on the difference. But when I saw the pepper cannon can do that about 10 times quicker, I had to try it, and it is totally worth it for rubs like this. So this is definitely going to be something you'll see more of as we go forward, because the flavor impact here is significant. So let's get back to making up the rest of our rub. So since I'm actually cooking a couple other things, I'm going to, as I mentioned, double the rub. So instead of 2 tablespoons, I'm going to go for 4 of our fresh cracked black pepper here. Then we're going to want 2 tablespoons of our Diamond Crystal Kosher salt. And now, since we're adding the ratio, instead of being 50-50, we're going to add a little bit extra of our Diamond Crystal Kosher salt using a teaspoon. So since I'm doubling the recipe, it's going to be 2 teaspoons of Diamond Crystal Kosher salt. Next, we're going to go 4 teaspoons of our Lowry's and 1 tablespoon of garlic. Mix that up well, and our salt and pepper rub is ready to go. So now that we've got our rub made up about 24 hours ahead of time, we want to start the process of dry brining. This is maybe one of the most important things you can do to make a huge difference in your cooking at home, as the salt has time to penetrate into the meat deeply, as well as the fridge and the salt sort of help create a better Maillard reaction by drying the outside of the surface. So to do that, I like to get my steaks out. We're going to pat them dry so they're nice and ready to take on our binder. So I'm going to use Truff hot sauce. If you weren't going to use Truff hot sauce, you didn't have to pat them dry. You could just use the natural moisture on the steak to help your rub stick. But I actually want it dry, and to replace that moisture with Truff hot sauce, since this has truffle oils in it that just really enhance the flavor. And I promise you will not taste any hot sauce when these are fully cooked. So that'll be our binder. We'll hit it with our rub, and we'll get these in the fridge to sit overnight. So my Big Joe is already cleaned out from a previous cook, so we just want to get to adding a little bit more fuel. Going with Fogo Super Premium. It's a nice balance of clean burning wood taste without too much smoke. So if you haven't tried it, I definitely recommend it. Let's add this in and grab our grill torch. You notice I have the soapstone in already that is sitting on a cooking grat. This is going to help the soapstone get up to temperature while our grill's warming up. Plus, it's going to act as our heat deflector plate. So I'm going to put another cooking grid above that. That's going to be our indirect setup. And then later on, when I want to sear, I'll be able to drop right down. So I call this my double duty soapstone, where it acts as our heat deflector as well as our sear surface. So to pull this off, we're just going to push this extra little bit of fresh Fogo that I added underneath and start our fire. So now that we have the coals pushed to the back, I'm just going to grab my Grill Blazer sous vide gun and start a fire right towards the middle bottom section, so that'll work its way back, and then we'll let our Joe come up to temperature. So in elapsed time, that was just about a minute. You can see the coals have already started to ash over white, which is the sign that we're looking for, that will now catch and burn nice and clean. I'm going to drop my second cooking grid in above the soapstone, so that will act as our diffuser and get nice and warm so it's ready for us when we want to sear. Bottom vent are all the way open, top vent's all the way open. Let's let the Joe build some heat. So while we're waiting for our Big Joe to come up to temperature, it's the perfect opportunity to set up our meter probe. If you haven't seen the meter probe before, I'm a big fan of it, because not only is it a simple and easy to use app interface, it last year got a huge upgrade with the ability to take notes. So good, bad, or ugly, you can make note of what happened. And since it's not every day that you cook a tomahawk ribeye or a brisket, sometimes a few weeks or months goes by, so it's really nice being able to reference back. And if you did something great, that you can pick that right back up where you left off and repeat those results again. And if unfortunately it didn't go so well, you can avoid that or try something new next time you cook. I'm going to be setting my meter probe to have an alarm for around 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, this is well below what some people would think from a medium rare perspective, but using the meter, I've actually learned that carryover cooking on a steak this size can be as much as 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So if I set it for 120 and I pull it off and just let it rest inside, it will work its way all the way up to 130 degrees Fahrenheit. If I don't let this start losing some energy and we go to sear right away, this is how you end up overcooking your steak, because it has forward momentum, and then you hit it with the sear, which is even more forward momentum, and it will carry past what we want. So to help make sure that we don't get any of these negative side effects of overcooking our steak, a method that works really well for me, no matter what temperature you want, is delete about 10 to 15 degrees, and that's when you want to take your steak off. So for me and our family, I'm going to be taking this off at 120, knowing that it'll continue to carry over cook to about 130, and then I actually want to wait till I see that temperature going the other way, maybe 128, 127, before I throw it on the soapstone for our bourbon sear. I'll bring it nice and close. We'll get our meter probe inserted and ready to log today's cook. It's a little breezy if you haven't noticed. So we'll just grab a probe, and if you've not seen a meter probe before, what we want to do is look for this line. This is where we want to go into our tomahawk pass to make sure we get an accurate reading of our food, as well as an ambient temperature sensor. So I'll line this up here in the center, go right down the middle to about that line. Looks good, ready to go on the Kamado. Okay, our grill is up to temperature, actually over temperature. I'm looking for about 270 degrees Fahrenheit, and the dome is reading a little bit beyond, as you'll see in a moment. But that's okay, since I want to make sure that the dome is passing the hand test. And so the hand test, if you've never heard of that, means that our dome is heat soaked. So I should be able to hold my hand there. It should feel warm, but not to the point where it's scalding. Or if I feel hardly any heat whatsoever, we are not quite up to temperature. So we are right at that point right now, and that is a critical step to make sure that we get full benefit and advantage of all three heat sources inside of a Kamado Joe. We're gonna get conduction, which is our steak touching the grill or being just above a heat deflector. Then we're gonna get radiant heat, which again, you'll get from that heat deflector as well as the dome, which is why we wanna heat soak it, so we can cook it evenly all the way through. And then convection airflow is that hot air moving throughout our grill, which is one of the advantages of sort of the double duty soapstone, is we're making that fire work really hard to come out and around and get the benefit of that extra airflow. So let me show you the vent settings for about 270 degrees Fahrenheit, and then we'll get our tomahawk ribeye on for our indirect portion of this cook. So as you can see, the Big Joe is racing up temperature very quickly now. Let's take a look at the fire, see what's going on. So you can see we've got lots of good flame. So we want to slow that down. So I'm going to put the bottom draft door down to 1 finger, and I'm going to close this top vent to about 1/8 of an inch or so past this first line, and let that stabilize for a few minutes, and that should land us right back around that 270 degree Fahrenheit mark. Okay, our temperature set in just perfectly right at 270 degrees. So let's get this tomahawk ribeye on the Big Joe. I am going to place it like this so the bone is towards the front. The soapstone sits nice and far back, so most of our heat is going to be being forced out by the soapstone and rolling over our ribeye this way. So for a little extra protection, I'm going to start with the bone towards the heat. All right, the meter probe just shot me an alert on my phone and let me know that our tomahawk ribeye is just about to hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit internal temperature. So this is the point where I want to get it off and let it carry over cooking. I'm guessing it'll go anywhere between 127 and 130, but I'll leave the probe in so we can track and follow along for sure and see exactly where it lands. Let me bring the camera nice and close. We'll get this off, and we also, while taking this off, we're going to remove that grate up top so we can get down to our soapstone. Once we do that, we're also going to open our bottom vent, top vent all the way, and once our coals are going, I'm going to rake just a few out so there's a little bit of spill area. So when we drizzle on our bourbon and they fall down into the coals, we want that to be able to hit flames versus just going right down into our ash collecting tool down below. Let me move the camera nice and close. We'll get this off, show you everything you need to know. So just as we are coming up to our finishing temperature, I've already opened our top vent all the way as well as our bottom vent. So we are just starting to climb. It's reading right on 300 degrees Fahrenheit now. You can start this process always a few minutes before you take things off, just to help reduce the amount of time it takes for everything to come up to temperature. But this will take about 10 minutes, which is perfect for our steak to rest. Check this out. Oh, that looks good. It's gonna look even better once we sear it. So I'm just gonna let this rest, pull off this grid, and let it continue to get nice and hot for inferno mode. Okay, our Big Joe is up to temperature. It never ceases to amaze me just how quick Fogo skyrockets, especially the Big Joe. It gets so much air up to nuclear temps. I'm still gonna wait another minute or two because our tomahawk has not started to drop back down. So it peaked at about 127 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm gonna wait till I see 126, 125, so I know that it's losing momentum. So that way we've got some extra wiggle room, easier for me to say, to work with when we get to our sear without pushing that well past the temperature that we want. I'll rejoin you in a couple minutes over by the Big Joe when we're ready to start our sear. Okay, as you can see, we've gotten even hotter. We're now at steakhouse 900 degrees. I've got our bourbon all set aside, our tomahawk. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this on, let it sear for about 20 to 30 seconds, and then drizzle a little bit of bourbon over the top of the steak towards the fire. Let that flambe, and then we will repeat on the other side. It's gonna happen quick. Let's go. Oh, it's hot in there. Here we go. Moment of truth. So we start just drizzling a little bit over the steak and come back this way. And as you notice, you do want to be wearing high heat gloves for any flames that come up. All right, let's flip, try the other side. Drizzle over. So that looks, whoo, it's hot. That looks amazing. I'm gonna let that rest a minute. We'll slice into it. Our tomahawk ribeye looks and smells amazing. There's no way to just describe the aromas that come out of the grill and that are coming off of this steak. And I'm struggling for words here, but that caramelly nuttiness that I described at the beginning is absolutely what's on here, infused with beef. It smells amazing. It's making my mouth water, and we're even going to start just drooling on you. So before that happens, and it's terrible for everyone, let me bring the camera nice and close. We will slice this up and get a couple pieces for our taste test. I also brought out some Malden's smoked sea salt for a bit of a finishing salt. We'll try a piece without it and then one with it in case we need a little bit of extra salt. In small moderation, that just unlocks another sort of like extra boost of flavor. So I think we'll end up liking that one more, but that's why we'll try one of each and give it a chance to see. So let's come nice and close, slice this up. Okay, it's go time. I'll mention below, I'm doing a video in the future on different Dalstrong series. I've been asked a bunch about that, so thank you Dalstrong for sending me an Omega so I can do that comparison between Gladiator, the Shogun, which is what I bought, as well as the Omega. Make sure you're subscribed to check that out, as well as there's a 10% savings in the description below. But enough about that video. Let's get in today's. Slice this open and see how we did. It smells so good. Here we go. Moment of truth. Oh, look at that. That'll continue to bloom out just perfect once a little bit of oxygen hits that. But I think that is right on the money for a medium rare. Let's get a few slices here so we can do our taste test. Oh, it's like butter. Go Salt Bay on these pieces right here. And I won't salt that one for our taste test. Okay, moment of truth. Let's dig in for our taste test. I'm going to start with the non-salted piece first. Let you know what I think. Oh, wow. There's like a symphony of flavors going on that's hard to even make sense of what's going on, which is perfect. Because if we were to take that and you were to say, I taste alcohol, you don't. Or hot sauce from our binder, you don't. Or our rub, salt, you don't. Or beef, which you get lots of. If any one element was way too high and everything else was way too low, you're like, oh, that's too much of something. What's going on here is like a tidal wave of perfectly balanced flavors, and your tongue almost doesn't know what to do with that or what to dial into first. So with a moment to reflect, here's what I can tell is going on with our taste test. So first, that crust is on point. You're getting a little bit of like crisp and saltiness that just melts away as if a single flake of sea salt, where at first it's got some texture and then it just dissolves. That's like what our crust is. Then like the warmth of that nutty caramel flavor just kind of comes over that, and it's a really pleasant experience. And following that, I'm getting like, there was just like a slight peak of heat from our fresh cracked pepper that you get with any fresh cracked pepper, but it just kind of like warms over and then dissipates immediately. It's not spicy like you would expect from a hot sauce or a hot pepper like habanero or ghost pepper or something like that. It's got a little bit of warmth and it mellows right out. This is family friendly, but incredibly good. And then you're starting to get like just that you notice the juiciness and the beef flavors. Let's try, I'm so excited, but let's try one with the salt and see the difference. Normally it's a 10-20% sort of just amplification of everything we had, and if it's going to be 10 to 20% better, watch out. I might just run away off screen. I don't know. Here we go. Cheers. Oh yeah. I'm going to take the second one. This is too good. I'm not waiting. Sorry. Wow. Wow. This is ridiculous. Ridiculous. So there's lots of different ways that you can sear your steak, and it really comes down to, sort of, individual preferences. Some people are, sweet tooth. Some people are salty, and so if you find yourself someone who likes bourbon, likes kind of the salt, this is definitely one for you. If you happen to be sort of more of the sweet person, that mayo-based sear with a little bit of acid undertones from something like either a red wine vinegar or apple cider vinegar, that sort of appeases to that crowd. So depending on where you are will really determine which one of these different methods appeal to you. But for me, this is on the money. Absolutely love it. Speaking of love it, if you love today's video, please help others find it by smashing that like button so YouTube can connect it with more people. And if you'd like to see more of these videos, make sure you hit subscribe in order to be notified when new videos come out. That's about it for today, though. I'm James from Smoking Dead Barbecue signing off. And remember, don't be afraid to fire it up. Oh, I think I'll take a few more here. Oh, I'm in heaven.